It is a moment of profound peace, where the soul is elevated, words become sincere prayers, and the heart connects directly with the divine. A moment of total surrender, of unshakable faith, lived in a place of silence and contemplation, far from the noise of the world. Now, what would happen if this exact moment, this culmination of faith and devotion in a fervent prayer, were followed in a matter of minutes by a situation of extreme danger, where the lives of all those present hung by a thread? A situation so unexpected and violent that it would make anyone question the fragility of existence, but at the same time, it would reinforce the belief in protection that transcends human understanding. It is about such a story that we are going to talk about today. A true story, experienced by a group of people of faith, gathered in an old convent, who experienced the proximity of the abyss right after a sublime moment of collective prayer. They almost suffered the worst, but something happened that changed the course of events. Stay with me until the end to learn the frightening and inspiring details of this life-changing experience. And as you prepare to dive into this narrative, do something important right now. Go to the comments and write the names of your loved ones, friends, family members, or anyone you know who urgently needs prayer at this time. We will add all of these names to our main prayer with a rosary at the end of this video, joining our voices and intentions in a single cry for those in need. Comment now. The scene unfolds in a centuries-old convent, nestled amidst tranquil hills, far from the hustle and bustle of the city, a haven of peace and spirituality. It was a place known for welcoming groups for spiritual retreats and moments of deep reflection. On this particular occasion, a group of believers, moved by a genuine thirst to draw even closer to their faith, decided to spend a few days in this secluded place. They were people of different ages and backgrounds, united by a common purpose: to dedicate time to prayer, study of the scriptures, and fraternal communion. The atmosphere was serene and full of positive expectations, with each participant immersed in their personal quests and sharing their spiritual journey with others. The days passed in meditative silence, deep reflections, and, of course, many hours dedicated to prayer, both individually and communally, creating an environment of intense spiritual energy and inner peace that seemed to shield the place from any external adversity. They felt that they were in a true oasis of faith, protected and enveloped by divine grace, preparing their hearts for a culminating moment of joint prayer that would be the high point of the retreat. The most anticipated moment arrived. Gathered in the main chapel, a simple space but steeped in the history of countless prayers over the centuries, the group began a special prayer, perhaps a fervent rosary, a moment of intense praise, or a powerful intercession for their lives, for their loved ones, and for the world. Voices joined in harmony, words echoed off the ancient walls, and the spiritual presence seemed palpable in the air. Each person there was completely surrendered, with their hearts open, their minds focused on communicating with the divine, feeling a deep and restorative connection. It was one of those rare moments when prayer transcends the mere act of speaking, becoming a transformative experience, a fusion of intentions and faith that created a powerful wave of spiritual energy. They prayed for protection, for strength, for peace, for hope, pouring out their concerns and gratitude before the altar, feeling completely safe and supported in that sacred space, in that moment of communion with the transcendent. The feeling was of fulfillment, that they had reached a spiritual peak in that retreat, feeling renewed and prepared to face any challenge. As soon as the last words of that intense prayer fell silent and a reverent silence hung in the air, a slight movement began to be perceived outside. At first, it was just distant sounds, perhaps the wind picking up, a barely perceptible murmur in the nature that surrounded them. No one paid much attention. After all, They were in a secluded place, and nature always makes its sounds known. People began to calmly rise from their knees, exchanging glances of peace and satisfaction, still enveloped by the feeling of the recently finished prayer. Some headed towards the chapel exit, others remained seated in silent meditation. However, in a matter of minutes, that distant murmur began to intensify, gaining volume and urgency. The wind, which had been gentle, turned into strong gusts that made the ancient trees around the convent sway in an eerie way. The sky, which had been serene moments before, began to darken rapidly, taking on ominous shades of gray and purple, and a distant thunder rumbled, an unsettling harbinger of what was to come. Suddenly, the calm was completely swept away by a sudden fury of nature. What had begun as a strong wind evolved into a violent storm, with gusts that howled like wild beasts around the convent. The rain fell in torrents, beating against the windows with force, and the thunder became constant, followed by lightning that illuminated the dark sky in blinding flashes. The ancient structure of the convent began to groan under the pressure of the winds. Tiles rattled, wood creaked, and the sound of the rain on the roof became deafening. The group, who were scattered or moving around the chapel, became instantly alert, with fear beginning to settle on their faces. It was a storm of proportions that seemed disproportionate to the change that had occurred just a few minutes before. The contrast between the inner peace they felt after prayer and the sudden violence outside was shocking and disorienting, creating a sense of vulnerability that contrasted sharply with the security they had felt minutes before in the fervor of prayer. The moment of greatest panic and danger came when a terrible, thunderous sound erupted from outside, followed by a strong tremor in the structure of the convent. A huge, ancient tree, which was dangerously close to one of the wings of the building where part of the group was, could not withstand the force of the wind and gave way. It fell with terrifying violence, not hitting the building head-on, but falling in such a way that its crown and thicker branches smashed against the stone wall and the roof of that specific section. The impact was brutal. Stones were loosened, part of the roof gave way with a frightening noise of tiles and wood breaking, and shrapnel flew. In that exact spot where the tree had collapsed minutes before, several people were gathered, talking calmly after prayer. However, by some inexplicable intuition, or perhaps because they had moved to help close a window or simply changed places, most of those people were no longer precisely at the point of greatest impact. The despair was momentary. The certainty that someone had been seriously injured or even had not survived hung in the air. The destruction was visible, the danger imminent and real. As suddenly as it had begun, the storm's fury began to subside, leaving behind a heavy silence, interrupted only by the dripping of rain and the creaking of damaged structures. That group of faithful, shaken to the core by the experience, began to assess the damage and, more importantly, to look for each other. The scene was one of partial destruction, the external wall damaged, the roof with a frightening gap, debris scattered about. But to everyone's surprise and relief, despite the violence of the impact and the proximity of the danger, no one had suffered serious injuries. There were scratches, huge scares, but nothing life-threatening. They hugged each other, tears of fear and gratitude streaming down their faces. The realization was undeniable. They had escaped the worst by an incredibly narrow margin. The tree, which could have crushed the convent wing, seemed to have been deflected in its fall in a way that minimized the direct impact on the points where the people were. The timing of the storm, the tree's fall, and the fact that the people were not exactly where the main impact occurred all aligned in a way that seemed to defy mere coincidence. The experience left an indelible mark on each of them. The conversation that followed was not about the scare but about the miracle, about the sense of protection that, for many, was intrinsically linked to the fervent prayer they had just concluded. Why did the storm come when it did? Why did the tree fall when it did, minimizing the casualties? Was it possible to ignore the sequence of events? Deep prayer, extreme danger, deliverance. For them, the answer was clear. The protective hand of God had intervened. This experience did not diminish their faith. On the contrary, it strengthened it in a way that years of regular prayer might not have been able to. They had seen firsthand the fragility of human life and the unpredictability of natural forces, but they had also sensed the presence of something greater, caring and protecting. This story has become a living testament to the belief in the power of prayer and divine providence, reinforcing the conviction that even in the most dangerous moments, we are not alone and that genuine faith can be a powerful shield, a beacon of hope even when darkness settles around us. This remarkable story, experienced by those faithful in the convent, resonates powerfully in our own daily lives. While we may not face literal storms that bring down trees on our homes immediately after a prayer, we are constantly navigating challenges, uncertainties, and sometimes dangers that are just as real as that storm, be they physical, emotional, spiritual, or existential. Just as that group sought refuge in prayer on their retreat, we too need to make prayer a daily refuge, a constant habit, and not just a resource in times of despair. We need to pray for peace in our hearts and in the world, pray for wisdom to forgive those who hurt us. Because forgiveness is an act of faith that liberates. Pray for greater faith to overcome the doubts and fears that assail us, and pray tirelessly for more conversions, so that more people can experience the hope and love that sustain them in the midst of tribulations. History reminds us that prayer is not a magic wand that eliminates problems, but a source of strength and, at times, unexpected deliverance. It is this active faith, this constant prayer, that prepares us for challenges. And, thinking of those who are facing their own storms at this time, I reinforce the invitation from the beginning. If you have not yet commented, or if you think of anyone else, write now in the comments the names of the people who need urgent prayer. Let us present them in our prayer of the Rosary, trusting that the union of our prayers has immense power. This was the moving and inspiring story of a group of believers who, after a moment of intense prayer in a convent, almost faced the worst, but felt the strength of divine protection. It is a powerful reminder that, even in the most peaceful moments, life can present its challenges, but faith and prayer are anchors that keep us firm. What reflections did this story awaken in you? Have you ever experienced or know of a story where faith and prayer seem to play a crucial role in a moment of difficulty or danger? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your perspective is very valuable and enriches our community. We believe in the power of sharing and praying together. And if this story touched your heart, if it inspired you or made you reflect, please leave your like on this video. Your like helps this message reach more people who may need to hear about the hope and strength that comes from faith. And of course, if you are not yet part of our community, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss our next videos, where we will continue to explore stories of faith, hope, and overcoming. Thank you for being here, for sharing this moment, and for joining us in prayer. May peace and protection be with you.